Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write and I talk about movies. My pronouns are he, him, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. Co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
Indeed.
Yes, you are.
Mm-hmm.
For now.
Yeah.
I knew someone was going to bust that out after last week's.
Oh, man, I forgot about that. Thank you for the trauma, reliving that shit.
I thought you'd appreciate that was a zinger against Evan.
Yeah, I completely spaced. Like, no memory.
Well,
it's like, oh, Megan's being cheeky, you know?
Right. Yeah. If this was like Star Wars or Top Gun, you'd be seeing like the little targeting computer, and my plane was like weaving in and out, and then it just lined up, and it was like just like click, 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 click.
Yeah.
This went to such a nerdy place, and I'm so here for it. I love it.
Yeah.
And not
Super
just
nerds.
Not just because I'm going to watch Obi-Wan Kenobi after we're done recording.
Right.
Nice.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, you guys are here.
Oh, we're
pardon
doing a
us.
show. Oh, whoops.
Pardon us for the first minute and 41 seconds while we just do inside jokes.
Yeah, you know, that's what we do. That's what we like. And speaking of what we like to do, go check us out over on our Patreon. If you are a $5 patron, if you're not, consider joining, because every single week we put out bonus episodes. They're a blast. We love doing them. We hope you love listening to them as much as we like talking about them and having them. And you also get to vote in monthly polls. And there was a poll we just did. We're going to be dropping the results of that next week, so look for that. But for this week, we talked about the 1986 comedy? Jonathan Demme's question mark? Jonathan Demme's Something Wild, because we wanted to revisit a Ray Liotta film.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Or
we actually visit, yes.
Yeah.
Revisit
Yes.
his role, but visit for us, because none of us had seen it before. But yes,
Right.
but it's a very lively conversation. We have some divergent opinions on it, so it's a spicy conversation, so go check it out. And now on to the main show. For this week, we have two films we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, the new film.
Chip 'n Dale.
Rescue Rangers.
Yeah, I got things to say about Chip 'n Dale. So.
Well, we will
me
get
too.
to that. Oh, we will get to that. I love that you guys
Yeah.
are chomping at the bit. You're raring to go. But
Yeah.
first, before we talk about the new animated film, we are talking about the documentary, The Found Footage Phenomenon. And that is on Shudder right now. And here is the one-sentence IMDb summary. It's an independent documentary charting the origins of the found footage subgenre, tracking it through to the technique's current form and asking what the future is. That's a terrible sentence.
Yeah.
Yes, it
It's a
is.
very, very poorly written sentence. The documentary is
Kind
directed.
of in keeping with the documentary, though. So
Yeah. So the documentary is directed by Sarah Appleton, who interestingly was also the DP on the documentary Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched by Kira Janice. And
cool.
It's also directed by Philip Escott. And yeah, so basically it's an entirely talking head documentary with some clips of films woven in, but they're the interviews are with the filmmakers of these found footage films, as well as some film critics. And yeah, so guys, what did you think?
well, I'm going to start this one and say this was my suggestion, and so mea culpa, fall on the sword. I am sorry I made you both sit through this, because this was tedium at its fucking finest, as far as I was concerned. This is like a bunch of behind the scenes / director, not commentaries, but like the interviews that they used to do on DVDs and Blu-rays in the mid 2000s, all strung together into a movie. and it sort of has a narrative in the sense that it traces found footage from, I guess you could say, what's the Michael Powell movie?
Peeping Tom.
Peeping Tom.
Mm-hmm.
They go all the way back to that, and then they get to, I don't know what the next fucking movie is. It's not Blair Witch, but it's close. And
Cannibal
then
Holocaust, I think.
Cannibal
was the next
Holocaust.
thing that they jumped
And
to.
which is
Snuff
an
films
amazing
first.
movie. I mean, it's fucking weird as shit, and it's not very well acted, but boy, does it really look like people are getting murdered. And it's just so disappointing that you've got this genre of movies, which I think is fascinating. I think found footage movies are fascinating, generally speaking, and especially when they're done well.
Yes.
I like the first Paranormal Activity. Actually, I kind of like the first three. I haven't seen the fourth or fifth or sixth or however many there are now. But there is a lot of stuff you can do with found footage movies if you have a good idea. And the nature of it being low budge means just about anybody can do it. But what the filmmakers of this documentary didn't seem to realize is, like, you have to have a good idea for your documentary too. And having a bunch of filmmakers just like be talking heads, and you have a clip here and there of, like, there's that movie, I can't remember, is it Megan is Missing or Megan's,
Yeah, Megan is Missing. Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that movie, and apparently I've heard of it, and apparently it's one of the creepiest fucking found footage movies ever. And people like hate it, or, they're transfixed by it, I guess. And I was kind of fascinated with that, but they don't even really talk about it very much. Or the director kind of talks around it, talks around it. He's like, well, here's the idea I had, and this is why we did this. And they didn't address any of the accusations of, hey, this is more or less, fucking weird that you've got 15-year-old kids doing this shit on screen. I don't know. And then just some of the movies, I'm like, this is a legitimately bad movie that we're talking about, so I don't know why, there was that. And then just the quality of the interviews was so variable. Like, some of the sound was just like, did you record this in a cavern? I mean, like, put up some fucking baffling and, and have the person, put the mic right next to their face instead of across the fucking room. What is wrong with you?
I think some of them were recorded over Zoom or some other kind of remote recording.
Yes.
That's the sense that I got, and why some of the audio quality was variable. I was thinking,
there's still ways around that. There's ways to tweak that.
Yeah. Or you go back and you listen to it and you're like, maybe we need to re-record this interview because the sound's not so great.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I just, it was not a mixed bag for me. It was just like, and it's the longest hour and 41 minutes ever. So.
Damn. Coming out swinging on this documentary.
I fold laundry very slowly, and I finished my laundry folding, and I was like, okay, so it takes me a long time to fold laundry. We must be like an hour and 25 minutes into this. This is like 42 minutes in. Like, fuck. So that's where I come down. How about you, gang?
Yeah, this documentary did not make me as miserable as Dave. but I enjoyed parts of it quite a bit. I think I was kind of surprised because, it was like a found footage documentary. I thought they might just like jump right in to like start with Blair Witch and things like that, and just kind of go into the last like 20, 25 or so years of found footage and how it's become such a phenomenon. So it's actually kind of surprised in a good way that they went back longer ago than that and tracing found footage back to even stories like Dracula and the kind of like found diary idea and
the epistolary novel,
kind of tracing it through the 60s, the 70s, and, even into the 80s and 90s. And so that part I found really fascinating. And normally I don't love talking heads, but I did enjoy hearing some of these filmmakers talk about their ideas, like where they came from and how they became found footage. Like when they were talking to the guy who made I think it was the UFO one.
Yes.
Where he was like one of the first found footage, and he was just like, it came because I had no money. I wanted to make a movie. My friends dad passed away. He had some money, and he said, I can give you like $5,600. And he's like, I can't do anything for that. So I'm just going to come up with this idea to like basically make a found footage before found footage. So some of that stuff I found really insightful and fun, especially how many directors kept saying, I swear to God, I was not ripping off other people. My movie just like got shelved or like came out later. So it looked like I was ripping off other people.
Yeah.
And that was really amusing to hear. And I was thinking back to when we saw that Boris Karloff documentary and just how bad the backgrounds were.
Ooh,
and some
boy.
of these like interview subjects, whenever I thought the background started to look fake, they cut away to like a side shot so you could see they were in a real location. And I was kind of like, okay, phew, this is like a real thing. And this is not just like a bad green screen. These are just wherever they did, like this guy's backyard, like the British filmmaker who made that, what was it called? Ghost Watcher or something like that. Or it was like, this is his like backyard. It's not a really shitty green screen of like a pond, like a scummy pond behind him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I definitely enjoyed this more than you. I liked the score. I liked the kind of 80s style synthy kind of score. Having in the background kind of kept me more engaged. But I do agree that there's kind of like a repetitive quality to it where there's some really good insights into like how found footage came to be and why it's popular and why it resonates with people around these ideas of like tricking people into thinking it's real or having the make it seem like it's discovered footage kind of allows people to believe the more fantastic elements or to suspend their disbelief for it. But it does feel like there are points where they're just making the same point over and over again. You see like 3 filmmakers say the same thing and you're like, okay, we could have definitely chopped this down or reordered this so that it doesn't seem like the same people, like these people are saying the same exact thing, like one after another.
Yeah, the editing definitely could have been tighter in that regard.
Yeah, one of the things, Megan, I'm sorry to jump in before, but one of the things I want to mention because I'll forget is like a lot of the Blair Witch stuff was a kind of a bummer because I've heard Daniel Myrick and Eduardo, can't remember his last name,
Sanchez,
tell those stories. Thank you. A million times. Like if you're watching this documentary and you don't know how the marketing campaign, if you're the kind of person who's going to watch this documentary, that means you are probably into found footage movies. You're not just going to wander into this documentary and be like, ugh. So you know how the marketing campaign for Blair Witch worked. And they spend 8 minutes on that. And it's like, why am I watching this? I knew this in 1996 or whenever the fuck it came out, 98. Because after it scared the shit out of me, I was like, oh, that's how they did it. So it's just like, why are we revisiting this? Anybody who would watch this movie knows this. You know?
That's fair.
I don't necessarily agree though, because Dave, you and I are almost the same age. And yes, I remember that marketing campaign. I remember seeing interviews before Blair Witch came out and I saw like a mini documentary of it it was like an hour-long thing or something, and I was like, oh my god, this is a real case that this movie is based on. And then it's like, oh no, it's all just marketing. And I'm like, that's genius, that's great. But you and I remember that because we lived through it. I'm not so sure that if you take and I'm just picking a random age, a 22-year-old who's into horror, maybe they don't know about the Blair Witch marketing. Maybe they do. I would assume if you're into found footage as a genre, you are going to know about that. So I agree with you. I don't think they needed to spend as much time. But I do think it's important because, I mean, it really was a game changer in regards to the found footage genre as well as the marketing of films and the integration of the internet and everything. So, I mean, it really was kind of a colossal moment. So I think it's important to talk about. But I also agree with you. Like, I've heard the filmmakers talk about these same stories a million times. So it's like... Can we, so if you're going to talk about that, if you're going to retread that terrain, which I think is super important, get some different insights, get some other people to talk about this, do something. But yeah, so I agree with you, Dave, but I also kind of disagree because I don't ever want to just come from the vantage point of like, well, I know this and everybody should know this. You know what I mean? Because like,
you're making a really good point.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I wasn't sure if it was coming out the way I was thinking. Because I was like, of course.
You definitely. it didn't occur to me that like, oh yeah, there are people who are 22 who have seen, VHS or whatever the fuck.
Right,
But they
right,
haven't
right,
seen
right.
Blair Witch.
Right. And I think that's the thing. Like, if you haven't seen Blair Witch or you didn't live through it, I think it's so easy to just gloss over and be like, oh, Blair Witch, that's some old movie. Like, you just don't get the scope of how huge that marketing campaign was and how kind of radical
Yeah.
it was to assume it was a real thing happening. Oh, but surprise, it's really not. Like, it took itself so seriously and it was just so great. So I'm glad it was in there, but I do agree with you. They should have kind of extrapolated it or looked at it from some different angles or something, or just edited it down because it didn't need to be as long as it was. I agree with both of you, actually. But I was not miserable watching this like you, Dave. So I feel terrible that you were so miserable.
It's all my fault, though. I mean, let's do the found footage phenomenon. Sweet. Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was interesting. Yeah, it sounded interesting.
I actually thought it was interesting, too. I think it's an incredibly formulaic structuring. I think it needs much better production value. I think the sound is, whoo boy, it's not good. Some of the cinematography is not good, which again is surprising considering that one of the directors is a cinematographer. So that's kind of surprising. But I found it really fascinating, the insights. I liked hearing from a lot of the directors. I liked them talking about their films. I'm a big fan of Alexandra Heller-Nicholas. She is so great. I love reading her work. I loved hearing her insights, and she had some really great ones talking about the realism of found footage films and gravitating to that. And then a lot of the people talked about the changing of 9/11 and how that changed everything, of course, because how could it not?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I had never really thought about how 9/11 changed found footage films, which is kind of a really fascinating. I found that really a fascinating observation because I'm like, oh yeah, of course it changed everything. Of course it changed found footage films too. Like it changed the landscape of everything. And I really, really liked listening to host director Rob Savage talk about how he's like, this never could have been made at any other time in our lives because we all were on lockdown and it's such a strange thing that we had this kind of collective traumatic experience. And it is I have touted its praises many, many times. I love Host. I think it's a genius film. But I really liked that. I wasn't really a fan of them. I'm glad they mentioned the animal cruelty in Cannibal Holocaust, but I kind of wasn't really thrilled about both of the people who mentioned it kind of just like shoving it off to the side. Like, I have to put my ethics aside. It's like, no, you really don't. Like,
you really don't.
Yeah.
You're choosing to put your ethics aside. And if that's a choice you want to make, that's a choice you want to make. But I'm like, no, I don't think all of this animal cruelty is really worth having a film for. Like, there's other ways to do it. There's better ways to have a film make its mark. So that bothered me. But what I will say is, despite its production problems, despite its formulaic structuring, I did really like that it simultaneously retains a very narrow focus while contextualizing the subgenre. And I really liked that. And I agree with you, Evan. I really liked how they went all the way back to not only Peeping Tom back in the 60s, but also to the epistolary novels, as I heard you say, Dave, earlier. You're like, Dracula, an epistolary novel. But yes, and it is so cool to think about the letters and think about the realism of those novels, as well as trying to have realism. And I also thought it was a really interesting observation talking about Cloverfield, because I was never a fan of Cloverfield. Like, it's not terrible, but it's kind of like, it doesn't really do it for me. And I never could quite figure out why, because it wasn't just the shaky cam, because I love the shaky cam in Wreck. I think that, that's such a great film. So I'm like, why doesn't Cloverfield hit? Why doesn't it resonate? And I think they had whomever it was, whichever filmmaker it was, said that it didn't quite resonate as great of a film as it is because there's not, kaiju monsters, there's not aliens running around that we know of. So it kind of isn't doing the very thing that found footage normally does, which is grounding itself in realism, which makes things more terrifying. But I thought that was great. So I think there's so many great observations here. I just wish this had a tighter edit and much better production value. And the other thing too that's interesting is I think everything is really good up until it gets to 2007, and they talk about what a watershed year that is for found footage horror films, which it really is. But it never, I mean, aside from talking about 9/11, it doesn't, like, why is 2007 that year? Like, why are all of these great films coming out? What is it about that year? And they don't really address that. And then it kind of, I feel like, just peters out. It kind of loses steam.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. I enjoyed hearing some behind the scenes stuff on some of my favorite found footage movies, like Wreck in particular. I enjoyed hearing behind the scenes about that. I enjoyed hearing about. I think it's Jerusalem, but there's a capital Z in the middle of it, so I was called Jerusalem, which is I've seen it, and I found it amusing that they snuck around Jerusalem disguised as tourists, and that's how they were getting away with shooting this found footage movie. So that was interesting. But I agree with you that the commentary, it doesn't do a good job of going beyond the like 07, because for me, I was kind of shocked that there was literally zero mention of the VHS franchise at all in this, because it's such a to me, like a landmark step in the found footage genre from like 2010, 11, 12, somewhere in there onward. You know, we've seen multiple of those movies. We've seen, you know, their anthologies, yes, but found footage, that's their whole thing. And so I was kind of shocked that there wasn't even a passing mention. It seemed like a weird blind spot for a found footage documentary to have.
Maybe they don't like Adam Wingard. I mean, who knows?
I mean,
maybe. But it is a very weird omission. You're right.
It is a big hole, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In the
I laughed at the ending though. I thought the ending was funny. They were commenting. They were showing a clip from one of the movies. They're like, you can't end a movie like that. You can't just have an abrupt ending and then the documentary just ends. I actually laughed at that.
Yeah. I didn't. Me.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that ending either. I was like, oh, I see what you did there, but
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say it's a mixed bag, but for you, Dave, it was just
It was just a bag.
It was just a bag, no bag.
Yeah.
Do we have any final thoughts before we move on?
My only final thought is like, I'm a fucking grump today. I don't know what's going on, but you know, patrons, when you go over and listen to the Something Wild conversation, yee. And now this, oh boy.
Oh boy,
So,
buckle up.
Anyway.
Oh, I will say my final thought is there definitely were some films that I was like, oh, I want to check that out. Like I might have heard of, but I hadn't actually seen. So like I haven't seen Ghostwatch. I want to see that. I haven't seen Afflicted. I want to see that because I'm like, I want to see a film from the point of view of a vampire. That sounds great. So,
Yeah. I haven't seen Host, so you know.
Oh, you should.
oh my God, it's so good.
I've
Yeah.
heard that it's
good.
the scariest movie ever made. Is that true?
No, but it's the scariest movie I've ever seen.
It is shockingly scary.
Yeah. So I want to say, because I feel like if you haven't seen it, you're like, "Psst, okay, Megan's a like pushover. No, like I watch all the scary movies. Nothing phases me. Nothing bothers me. Nothing. I mean, I might get a little jumpy, but like, whatever. It's just usually a jump scare. But no, but Host, I watched it on my laptop with the lights turned out, and it was an experience, and I was terrified. It was great.
Oh boy.
Yeah, definitely,
see,
definitely worth watching.
But see, now I've set it up. You're going to watch this, and you're going to be like, it wasn't scary.
No, I don't know.
I hyped
Jump
it up
scare.
too much.
I always jump at jump scares. Jump scares always get me. So, you know.
Oh, well, okay. I mean, but that's the thing. It's not just jump scares. Like there are jump scares in the film, but it is just creepy. Oh, it's like jump scares and creepiness. Oh my God. It's
Well,
so good.
what's the other
So good.
computer movie that
Unfriended?
sequel Unfriended. That one I thought was really good. Not the Dark Web, the second one, but the first one.
First one?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I need to see it.
Yeah,
Which they mentioned
Definitely.
both of those. So
Yeah, which I thought was cool that they mentioned those. Yeah. I actually think that was interesting hearing the inspirations, like especially like Evan, you mentioned it. Jaume, oh God, I can't think of his last name, the director of Rec, and he talks about how actually found footage was not his inspiration, but cops and like TV shows were his inspiration. I was like, that's incredible. Like that's so fascinating. But anyway.
yeah. I think my final point is I was also fascinated here. The directors talk about found footage as a vehicle for working through, because a lot of the found footage films are very brutal in their subject matter, and they were talking about a vehicle to kind of work through their own personal fears and trauma. Like the filmmaker was talking about hate crime, and he was talking about anti-Semitism and how like the movies like neo-Nazi dudes are a reflection of his own like fears and trauma surrounding anti-Semitism. And I was glad that the documentary included that part. I thought that was really cool. Because, it's like the way these directors talk about their movies can sound kind of like glib and emotionless for things that are like kind of scary and traumatizing. So it's nice to know that they're not just like treating it. They're not so like distanced from it. They do have like a personal stake in the stories that they're telling.
I'm so glad that you...
Oh,
go ahead,
I was
Dave.
just going to say I put that one on my Letterboxd watch list. So
nice. See, you got something out of it then.
I did.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Evan, because that was a really great moment too. And I really found that fascinating, and kind of sort of piggybacking off of that. It reminded me of a part I really liked where one of the women was talking about how people think of torture porn as a different genre than found footage, but how they're actually very much linked because they're both trying to move towards realism. And I don't know if I agree, but I thought that was fascinating nonetheless, and certainly is making me rethink the torture porn genre in a different kind of in a new light. So I'm like, that's really interesting. Like, the realism of the site of the body, or the body as a site of violence. So anyway, but I thought it was I don't know if I agree, but I thought it was an interesting point. Yes, nonetheless. It's very thought-provoking, which that's what I enjoyed. Yes.
Don't think it's going to make me want to watch more torture porn movies.
No.
Got me thinking about them a little bit differently, a little less dismissive, I'll say.
Yeah, which I liked that tremendously. But I'm not going to run out and watch more torture porn.
Yeah, no. I'm kind of glad that torture porn has kind of like had its day and is... I mean, it's not over, but it's certainly less prolific than it was.
No, but that just makes me think it's going to reappear at some point.
Oh, of course it will.
Because everything does. Everything's cyclical. So
yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, from torture porn to cartoon chipmunks, let's talk.
See, I don't want to give it. I had a joke ready to go, and I'm not going to do it because I didn't want to. Yeah.
Okay. Hold the joke. You can let it out of the bag in a moment. We're going to be talking about Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, not the amazing TV show from the late 80s, early 90s, but the film adaptation. And this is directed by Akiva Schaffer from the Lonely Island Boys. Yes, the Lonely Island with Andy Samberg and, oh my God, Jorah Taccone.
Oh, you're talking about the Lonely Island. I beg your pardon.
I was like, no, not John Mulaney. I was like, he's not in that. But yes, John Mulaney is one of the voices. He's the voice of Chip, and Andy Samberg is the voice of Dale. And let me get the one sentence description for y'all. 30 years after their popular television show ended, chipmunks Chip and Dale live very different lives. When a cast member from the original series mysteriously disappears, the pair must reunite to save their friend. All right, guys. What do we think? Dave, now's the time for your joke. Go.
Okay, so you were talking about torture porn, and you were saying from torture porn to Chip and Dale, and I was like, from torture porn to torture. So I'm gonna say I really don't think I can put into words how much I disliked this. But I'm going to try. So I don't know if I want to go first, though. I don't know if
Okay, let's have Evan go first then.
Yeah, sure, I'll go first. So let's start with the preface that I loved Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers when I was a kid. One of my favorite cartoons. I loved all the related Disney shows like Tailspin and all the ones that were kind of on during that era. Gummy Bears. So I was probably the most primed, like the most ideal candidate to see this movie. Like, yeah, I love that. And I loved Who Framed Roger Rabbit growing up, and I loved the idea of mixing live action and animation and throwing in lots of fun cameos from other cartoons and pop culture. So, I couldn't be a better person to sit down and watch this movie, and I have to say that I was just not a fan of it.
I knew it. I was like, there's a big butt coming.
Yeah, there's definitely a big butt, because I feel like I should love this movie. I love, mashup, like genre mashup. I love very meta movies, and for me, this just doesn't really work for like a number of reasons. I like John Mulaney and I like Andy Samberg separately. I don't know how well they play together in this. They kind of seem like they're on different pages, and it's not just that their characters are different pages. I feel like there's a distinct lack of chemistry between them, and also there's a distinct lack of chemistry between John Mulaney's voice and the animation for Chip as a character.
Oh,
There's
God,
so many
yes.
times I'm like, it just does not match what I think this character's voice would sound like. Just the way it's done, it's not good. But I think for me, this really just boils down to the fact that it's not doing anything really interesting with its premise of being this kind of meta Roger Rabbit style movie. It's just a series of sight gags and pop culture references. And while I enjoy those things, I need something more to latch on to.
Yeah. And it also is, it's so fucking lazy because it's doing all of this meta shit and commenting on the meta shit as it's doing it. And I fucking hate that.
Wait. You hate when meta shit is commenting on meta shit? I'm so intrigued.
To poo-poo it is what I mean.
I gotcha. Sorry, got it.
The whole thing with Chip is like, and this is the part where blah, blah, blah. And then they do it, and it's just like, they've given themselves an out for writing a shitty scene because one of the characters is telling you how shitty it is.
Right.
But by the end when they get to, and now we're going to have the theme song, but not the one that everybody loves, the one by the slick pop star. And it's just like, please, for one moment in this movie, give me the actual song instead of doing the thing that you've just made fun of, but because you made fun of it, now you can be forgiven for it. Just go fuck yourselves. I mean, Jesus. The one thing I found funny was the rap sequence because it was so bad. The rap was so bad that it was funny. And that was like the one gag that landed for me. The other thing that drove me nuts was just how like the story was so predictable. Like if you didn't know that J.K. Simmons was the bad guy, like from the moment he stepped on screen, you've never seen a movie before. And just the way that they made the jokes of he's like, oh, my wife had a serious illness. And I'm just kidding. I'm in it for the money. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just, it makes sense. So it was, I mean, torture's not the right word because it's not that bad. It's just Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. But I'm not as familiar with the cartoon as I think both of you are. Certainly not you, Evan. I've seen the occasional episode, and I think they use their Chip and Dale high voices in that, right?
Yes, they
aren't
do.
they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I agree with you about the lack of chemistry, and I think that John Mulaney is just the wrong fucking choice to play Chip. There's no joy in that performance at all, and I would think that even if you're Chip and you're stuck in selling insurance and things like that there has to be some kind of joy in the idea that you're a talking chipmunk,
Yeah.
Yes.
And then Andy Samberg is just so overdone, and Dale is written so stupidly, like he's just. But that's the other thing is like, and I don't think you have to like be precious with your source material, but
No.
it's made very clear if you watch all of the Chip and Dale cartoons, especially the ones with Donald Duck, Dale's not stupid. He's just got gap teeth, which is why everybody thinks he's stupid, I just hated this movie so much. I can't. It's Leonard Maltin when they used to do like the yearly book, they had a rating that was below 0 stars, which was bomb. This is a bomb in all capital letters.
But not the good kind of bomb.
Fucking awful. Yeah. Like, I hated the
Wow.
cop who was their sidekick. I hated her character, and the poor woman who had to play her she just had nothing to do,
Oh,
and
Kiki
her
Lane.
performance was lifeless because of it. And just, somebody say something that doesn't make us all want to go, drink ourselves into oblivion.
I didn't hate it like you guys did.
I had a feeling.
But I was really disappointed by this too. Like, I did not enjoy this. I don't want to rewatch this, which makes me sad, but I didn't hate it. I really like Andy Samberg, and I typically like Lonely Island Boys, their humor. I like watching their
too.
music videos. I think that's really funny. I've seen clips of Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping, which is also kind of funny. So
It's a great title.
Sure is. And the scene with Mariah Carey is amazing. Anyway, but I digress. So when I heard that it was them doing it, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's different. That's interesting." But the minute I heard John Mulaney's voice, and by the way, I do not like him, and mostly because of his awfulness as a person in real life, like having Dave Chappelle surprise people with his transphobic jokes on a set. But when I heard John Mulaney, when I heard his voice, Dave, you really captured it. Or maybe it was you, Evan. Or maybe it was both of you. You both were talking about how there was no joy in that performance. And it was a soul-sucking performance. Like, there was just nothing to that. And so it's like Andy Samberg is like cranked up to 11, which that's Andy Samberg. That's what he does. But you need someone who is like, I think of like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and you need an Andre Braugher who is hilarious, but very subdued, very dry wit. And that is not what was happening at all in John Mulaney's performance. There was no joy. There was no humor. There was no dry wit. There was no pathos in that character. There was nothing. It was such a phoned-in performance. It was awful. So that was a real downer. But I think Andy Samberg was great. And I have to say, I loved a lot of the cameos and the touches, and I loved that they got the original Gadget from Rescue Rangers to voice, and they had Zipper, and I really liked that Eric Bana was the voice of Monterey Jack, which I thought
that
was
was
so
kind of funny.
cute. Yeah, because
that was a very great choice.
we talk about Eric Bana and how underrated he is, and he is really such a delight, and I think he's great, and I think that was such a good choice. So yeah,
Joyful performance.
It was a joyful performance, yes. So he was really good, and there were moments that I laughed. There were things that I thought were funny, but it was so fleeting, and it would just like come and go. And yeah, I wanted this to be funnier. I wanted this to be sharper, but most importantly, I wanted this to be charming, and it just wasn't. It didn't exude joy. It didn't exude charm. And it just made me really sad more than anything. And it just made me want to watch the original Rescue Rangers rather than keep watching the film, which is kind of a disappointment. I will say I'm not always the biggest fan of mixing live action with animated characters, although I think it can be done quite well. I just don't think this was the way to do it. And it's unfortunate. So I didn't hate it. I didn't find it a torturous 2 hours or hour 40 minutes, whatever, to watch it. But I kept thinking like, oh, this should be better. This could be better. This should be and could be better. It could be so much smarter and funnier and sweeter. And it's just kind of not. So yeah, I was bummed. But I also was surprised because this got such great reviews. People are raving about it.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Maybe because
This
people
is how
thought it was going to
everybody
be
was raving
terrible.
No.
And it's not terrible. I mean, I know you think so, Dave, but like maybe people thought like they went in with really low expectations and they're like, oh, it's not terrible. It's kind of okay. I don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like the way I feel about X, like everyone was like fucking raving about that movie, and I was like, it's kind of a piece of shit, you know. And
I still like it.
You know, yeah, when I saw
dissenter.
like that the Rotten Tomatoes is like above 90% for this, I'm like, who the fuck is watching this movie and being like, this is great? Like I didn't like the mystery at the heart of it, you know. I thought, Will Arnett as like old grouchy Peter Pan. It's like, all right, is this really what
I thought it was a good idea. It just was so poorly executed.
Yeah,
Like, it could have been
just
really interesting commentary on showbiz. Like to
Right.
have a washed up like Peter Pan be like,
Right.
well, this was I had to resort to a life of crime because
Yeah.
I got
Right.
older and people didn't like me anymore.
Right. And
The
out with
thing
the
that-
old and with the new, the way that Dale like gets the CGI surgery and all that. Yeah, no, totally. And Will Arnett is such a great voice actor. I love him as a voice
Yeah.
actor, but yeah, it's just kind of okay.
The thing that drove me craziest, though, and you two are going to think I'm out of my mind, but
Oh, I
the thing
can't
that
wait.
drove me craziest, though, is when Chip got the dog ear grafted onto him. It just made me so mad because it was just so stupid. Because on top of everything else, I just thought to myself, now I've got to watch this stupid gag unfurl for however long it's going to unfurl, that he's got this like quail flippy thing or dog ear or whatever the fuck it is. And it's just like, and this is going to be a gag. This is what this movie thinks is funny. It's fucking crazy. It's starting to make me mad.
I would, if you had asked me what was going to make you the maddest about this film, I would not have thought the dog ear.
No, I thought you were going to talk about Ugly Sonic and how they kept showing his teeth repeatedly.
Oh, man.
Since people were so mad about that, the original Sonic design, his human-like teeth, and they just kept doing slow-mo on the teeth, like Chip and Dale getting distracted by Sonic's teeth. I thought that was what you were going to be really annoyed about.
No, I was like, his teeth are kind of gross. So
They are. But did we need to show it once? Do we need to keep seeing it more than once? But then again, there is that line of thinking that if you keep showing it over and over, it circles back around to be funny. That's what
that's the Mike Myers school of thought. I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
other people's school of thoughts, but Mike Myers is very much of that school of thought, and that's why I don't really like his movies either. So
Yeah, no. Well, I don't think he does that well, but yes, I agree with you. But
Right.
yeah, but my roommate's a huge fan of that. Not Mike Myers' humor, but of that kind of humor. Like if you do something stupid enough, it'll come back around and be funny. But yeah, but anyway, I'm not a fan of
Yeah.
that. But that's what I think they were going for. But I'm like, oh, but it wasn't funny the first time, so it's not
No.
funny when it comes back. Yeah,
yeah,
and I wanted the original theme song too, and I heard it. Like you hear it instrumentally in the film, in addition to at the end with the pop star covering it. But yeah, but I wanted to hear the actual theme song. But I will say I really liked that they had their high pitched chipmunk voices when they're arguing with each other. I thought that was a cute touch.
Yeah, that was funny too. And I liked that garage full of Chip and Dale memorabilia, including
Yes,
the Chip and Dale NES game, which I had, and it was a damn good NES game.
that's a good game. I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Although it was messed up because when you play 2-player, you could pick each other up and throw each other at things.
Oh
Wow.
I didn't ever play 2-player, so I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. That's kind of like in Donkey Kong Country. You could do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're Donkey Kong, you pick up the little monkey. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
do we have any final thoughts about this movie?
Oh, I'm sure I could find something else to bitch about, but I'm going to pass for everyone's sake.
I wish the villain was more interesting. Like, I think back to use Roger Rabbit again as an example. Like, Christopher Lloyd in that is fucking terrifying.
Yeah,
like
he
especially when
is.
you're a kid and you see that and you're like, this is fucking scary. He is scary. This idea of killing Toons by putting him in the dip. By the way, the dip made appearance in like a side moment in this
Yep.
as well.
Yeah,
But
this is pulling
that
very
was
heavily from
menacing.
it.
Yeah, that was menacing. That was scary, and it took someone who I normally was like, oh, they're so like fun, and made them scary.
Yep.
Christopher Lloyd normally plays this like lovable oddballs and like everything else, and then he was really scary in that. So I just feel like it was such a missed opportunity. Not to say that Will Arnett was bad at, because I think he was fine in this, but just the story was just not good, as you've both mentioned, and it just I was so bummed out. I was really looking forward to this, especially after hearing so many glowing reviews. I thought, oh man, this, like I said, I'm primed to be the right person to watch this movie.
You really were the right person to watch this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was because I loved the show so much, but yeah, no.
I feel vindicated though, because Evan is the person most primed to watch this movie, and he's bummed out too. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
It was a
you know
bummer.
it can't be good.
It was a bummer. Yeah. Like I said, I wasn't quite as miserable as you two, but it was a bummer nonetheless. I was like, oh, I never want to watch that again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so sad. So sad. But oh well. So let's do a quick recap. We just have 2 movies. So the found footage phenomenon is on Shudder right now. And I know, Dave, you would say no. I think that's
You are correct.
safe to say. But Evan, would you recommend this film?
I would. Yeah. I think there's enough interesting insights. And like you, I also kind of was like taking notes of like, oh, here's some found footage movies I haven't seen that I want to see. So I definitely think it's worth watching.
I agree with you. And Chippendale Rescue Rangers is streaming on Disney Plus now. Dave, I think it's safe to say you definitely would not recommend this.
Yeah. It is a hard pass. Your mileage will not vary.
Whoa.
Oh.
Evan, are you also going to pass? Or
there is that line in the Chippendale theme song about some crime slipping through the cracks, and I think this is a movie that can very much slip through the cracks.
Using its own lyrics against it. Amazing.
I know. That was spectacular. I loved it. Yeah, I feel like a real bummer saying I also don't recommend it, but I don't. I would say watch the original series instead. It's much more delightful. Yeah, I'm really bummed about that one. All right. Well, we want to give a huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clammer. Otto, thank you so much for making us sound great week in and week out.
Thanks, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are all over the place. So we're everywhere. It's your platform of choice. You can also find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. And at our website, you can also buy Spoiler Piece merch. There's a link to our TeePublic store. So buy that merch. We have t-shirts and hoodies and mugs and tote bags and you name it, all kinds of goodies. So go check that out. Pillows. It's a good pillow, actually. So go check that out. You can also find us all over social media. We're at Spoiler Piece on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. So come follow us. Come say hello. We love to hear from you. Speaking of how we love to hear from you, you can email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com or you can call us
at 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail message, text us, let us know. Hey, I love Chippendale Rescue Rangers and you guys are all dead wrong and here's why it is the greatest animated film of the year. Or, yeah, the found footage phenomenon is amazing. Or no, it's not. We want to hear what you have to say about these films and any films. So let us know what you think. Ask us questions. We love all of it. If you like the show, please rate and review us. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. That will take you to your preferred platform of choice. You can also rate us at Apple Podcasts, which helps us out tremendously. And you can rate us on Spotify as well. And if you really, really like the show, like really, really, come and consider joining our Patreon if you're not already a patron. And if you are a patron, thank you so much. But join our Patreon. Each week we put out bonus episodes. And this week, we talk about the 1986 film, Something Wild. We had a great conversation. You also get to vote in monthly polls for $5 a month. So come join us over there if you'd like. My name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write and I talk about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Dave Sees Movies.
And my name's Evan Green. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.